We all think of our immune system as this incredible bodyguard, right? It's this amazing network that's constantly protecting us from all sorts of threats. But what happens when that bodyguard gets it wrong? That's the huge paradox we're going to unpack today. A defense system so powerful it can actually become a double-edged sword. Exactly. The very system that's designed to keep you safe can misfire, it can overreact, it completely flips the script, and ends up causing harm. Welcome to the fascinating and sometimes frustrating world of hypersensitivity. And here's a really crucial idea to get right from the start. Hypersensitivity isn't a reaction from a weak or a broken immune system. No, it's a reaction from a normal, functioning one. It's not that the system is failing, it's almost that it's doing its job too well, reacting so aggressively to something that should be harmless that it ends up hurting us in the process. So how does this whole dramatic overreaction get started? Well, it turns out there's a universal rule that applies to every single one of these reactions, no matter which type we're talking about. It's always a two-act play. Act 1 is called sensitization. This is the first time your immune system meets a particular substance, an antigen. At this point, nothing really happens. No symptoms, no reaction. Your body is just taking notes, building a memory, and getting primed. Think of it like coiling a spring, getting it loaded and ready. Then comes Act 2, the shocking dose. You encounter that same antigen again, and that's the trigger that lets the spring fly, unleashing the actual damaging reaction. So, to make sense of all this, scientists have basically created a roadmap. They've identified 4 main ways the immune system can overreact, 4 different phases of hypersensitivity. And here's that roadmap. It's called the Gill and Coombs classification. Now, don't worry about memorizing this whole thing. The most important thing to notice is the onset column. See how it splits everything into 2 groups? Types I, 2, and 3 are all immediate. They kick in pretty fast, within minutes or hours. But type 4 is the odd one out. It's a delayed reaction, and it can take days to show up. That time difference is a huge clue about what's going on under the hood. Okay, let's dive in, starting with type 1. This is the one we're all most familiar with. It's the poster child for what we call an allergy, that classic, immediate, and sometimes really explosive reaction. The main characters in this story are a special kind of antibody called IgE, and these little cells called mast cells. You can think of mast cells as these tiny, pre-loaded grenades stationed in our tissues. And when we say this reaction is immediate, we are not kidding. The symptoms can literally erupt within minutes of being exposed to the trigger. So let's look at how this works. The first time you're exposed to an allergen, like pollen, your body produces a ton of these IgE antibodies. These antibodies then go and stick themselves all over the surface of your mast cells, basically arming them. They turn these cells into little walking time bombs, just waiting for a signal. Then, the next time you're exposed, that same allergen comes along and connects 2 of those IgE antibodies together. That's the trigger. Boom. The cell instantly degranulates, which is a fancy way of saying it explodes and releases a flood of chemicals, most famously histamine. And that chemical flood is what causes all the symptoms we know so well. It can be something relatively mild, like the itchy eyes and runny nose of hay fever, or a skin reaction like hives. But it can also be as serious and life-threatening as a full-body anaphylactic shock. It's all driven by that same underlying mechanism. All right, let's look at types 2 and 3 next. Now, these also involve antibodies, just like type 1, but they cause damage in 2 very different ways. I like to think of it as the difference between a case of mistaken identity and just messy collateral damage. The key difference is the style of attack. In type 2, which is called cytotoxic or cell killing, it's a direct hit. Antibodies bind straight onto the surface of our own cells, essentially painting a target on them for destruction. But type 3 is more indirect. Here, antibodies and antigens clump together in the bloodstream, forming this kind of sludge. This sludge then floats around and gets stuck in different tissues like our joints or kidneys. The real damage happens when the immune system shows up to clean up the mess and causes a massive inflammatory reaction right there. You can really see the difference here. On the left with type 2, the antibody is locked right onto the target cell. It's a sniper shot. But over on the right, with type 3, you can see those floating clumps, that immune sludge, getting deposited in the wall of a blood vessel. The damage isn't from the sludge itself, but from the huge, messy immune response that follows. It's the difference between a targeted assassination and just blowing up the whole city block to get one guy.
And the stakes here are incredibly high. A classic type 2 reaction is what happens when you get the wrong blood type in a transfusion. Your immune system directly attacks and destroys those foreign blood cells. For type 3, a good example is the kidney damage that can happen after a strep infection. All those antibody clumps get stuck in the kidney's delicate filters, triggering an inflammation that can cause serious long-term harm.
All right, let's shift gears now to the final type, which is a whole different ballgame from the first three. This is type 4, what we call the delayed attack, a slow-burning, cell-driven response. So what makes type 4 so different? Well, the biggest thing is no antibodies. Zero. This reaction is run entirely by cells, mainly T cells and another type called macrophages. And because it's run by cells, it's much, much slower. True to its name, this reaction is delayed, often taking a full 24 to 72 hours just to show up. The process still has that first sensitization step. An immune cell, called an antigen-presenting cell, basically teaches a T cell what the target looks like. This creates a population of memory T cells that are primed and waiting. So the next time you're exposed, these memory cells get activated, and they orchestrate a powerful cell-based attack. It just takes them a while to get organized. I can almost guarantee you've seen a type 4 reaction. That awful itchy rash you get from poison ivy or a nickel allergy? Classic type 4. It's also the principle behind the TB skin test. That little red bump is a localized type 4 reaction. And on a much more serious level, this is the main mechanism that drives the rejection of organ transplants. So, as we zoom out from all these details, we're left with this really profound question. What is the actual price of our protection? Why is it that our own defense system, this thing that's meant to save us, can so often be our downfall? Well, this brings us to this huge, central idea in medicine: immunopathogenesis. It's a bit of a mouthful, but the concept is simple. It's the idea that very often, the tissue damage, the symptoms, the sickness you feel, it's not actually caused by the invading germ itself. It's caused by your body's own immune response to that germ. Your defense literally becomes the disease. And the examples are just stunning. In rheumatic fever, the antibodies your body makes to fight off strep throat can get confused and start attacking the valves of your own heart. In some cases of dengue fever, having antibodies from a previous infection can actually help the virus get into your cells during a second infection, making it far more deadly. And that classic rash you get with measles, that's not the virus. That's the visible evidence of your immune system waging war inside your skin. Which really leaves us with this final, fascinating question to think about. Is all this hypersensitivity, is it an inherent flaw, a bug in our evolutionary design, or is it just the unavoidable price we have to pay for an immune system that is powerful enough to keep us alive in a world that's filled with very real, very dangerous threats? It's a pretty interesting trade-off to consider.